These buildings are not as bland as they seem. They are the landmarks of world finance, and ministers from around the world have come here to talk money. It's all part of an annual summit taking place this weekend, beginning with the heads of the 20 leading economies. But there is a cloud of concern hovering over the G20 nations. The BRIC bloc of G20, that is Brazil, Russia, India and China, have set a deadline for the IMF and World Bank to take on some serious financial reforms on a global scale. Revisions that would directly affect the world's economies. Starting first with the Brentton Woods system.
The first major world financial meeting.
The Brentton Woods system was set up in 1944 during the Second World War. And two institutions were established then, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. And so the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, lends money to countries who are experiencing particular problems. And then the World Bank was set up to lend money to countries who need it for their development. And initially that meant rebuilding Europe after the Second World War.
Breaking down or revising the Brentton Woods system means the U.S. dollar could lose its status as the world's leading currency.
You can trace a lot of the problems we've had with this financial crisis to the fact that the U.S. is able to borrow well beyond its means because it controls the global reserve currency.
With the U.S. Treasury Department holding the final vote on veto privileges, convincing the U.S. to accept real reforms could be the major challenge.
We need a truly global shift in power.
Outside the walls of financial power, protesters have embraced BRIC's call for reforming the World Bank and IMF system.
Bonus, give me my bonus!
However, their concerns are much more pessimistic.
I do not believe that you can have reforms that will be in the interest of people in the developing countries without having them on the table in the first place.
Back inside the buildings of financial power, revising the world's monetary policies seem to be in its early stages of evolution. Nothing concrete is expected for these meetings, but BRIC's call for mandatory reform by the end of 2010 is definitely under consideration.
How much action overrides the talk is what counts. Complaints over Western nations dominating decision-making here has led to G20 ministers contemplating a 3% shift in voting privileges to developing nations. But if real reform is underway, then countries with geopolitical and economic influence in these institutions will have to make real concessions to ensure new changes impact the global economy in a more responsible manner. Jahan Hafiz, RT, Washington, D.C.